How's it going, everyone? I am back with another video. This is going to be my Week 17 recap video where I go through all the NFL games that took place this past week, break down how the games went, at least how I interpreted them, what I got out of them, and yeah, just kind of explain my thought processes to all the games here. So I will dive into the first couple games we got, which were Christmas Day games. First one, Chiefs Steelers. Of course, the Chiefs had to make it difficult on all of us. Couldn't give everyone outside of Kansas City a Christmas present, having the most obnoxious, luckiest team in sports history, just unbearable team in sports history lose. Of course, they end up winning. And obviously, I'm a Chiefs hater. I think they're having the single luckiest season in the history of sports, probably. But I will say this is probably the best they've looked the entire season to me. And it looks like they might be heating up at the right time. The Steelers, very disappointing game, obviously, just not a good performance. The Chiefs, the first quarter, they were unstoppable. Like their offense has been super mid all year. Their offense looked unstoppable in the first quarter. And then the Steelers offense kind of picked up a little. Russ had a bad turnover in the end zone. They ended up getting touchdown. They got a touchdown overturned by a holding call, and then which I want to say was a little bit questionable, but if I remember right, maybe I'm thinking of a different play. I saw some people complaining about it. Some people I think were saying it was an obvious hold. I honestly kind of forget off the top of my head, but wouldn't be surprised that Chiefs get bailed out from a call. Of course, it's been their entire season pretty much. And then rush through the pick. They end up getting a touchdown, so it was 13-7 and a half. It was only a 6 point game, as kind of poor as it felt the Steelers were playing. The Chiefs did get a fourth down conversion where it looked like they were probably going to score a touchdown, but at least three in the first half. Play action pass to Kelsey, wide open over the middle. I just don't understand how he gets so wide open so often. But it ended up getting overturned on a holding call, which that's all the Chiefs do is hold, but usually they don't get called for it. And they had to punt. So the Steelers may caught a bit of a break there. Third quarter, each team just got a field goal. So it was a 6 point game going into the fourth quarter, and the Chiefs scored 13 points in the fourth quarter. Steelers just very much struggled offensively, pretty much waved the white flag at the end of the game. They punted down three scores with only a couple minutes left, so they pretty much waved the white flag there. As I mentioned, this is probably the best the Chiefs have played all year, how they've looked all year, to me at least. Mahomes probably played, honestly, to me, probably his best game of the year. Even though the Steelers have been, on a rough patch here. They're on a losing streak. Yes, they're playing the better teams in the league. They kind of have a brutal stretch of their schedule here, and their defense has been hurt, hasn't been playing too well. Still, it's the Steelers' defense, always respectable. One of the better defenses in the league this year, and Mahomes played a really good game. They pretty much had nothing in the run game, though, so I guess that's positive if you're a Chiefs hater like I am. Kelsey had a good game. Yeah, Worthy had a good game. Wanted kind of a breakout game for him a little bit. Justin Watson caught a deep pass on the sideline. Hollywood Brown, he's been very impactful in his two games. Their offense has definitely looked pretty solid the past two games since he's come back. Um, yeah, Russ didn't play a very good game, obviously. Did have a couple scrambles that were nice, I guess. Not an awful rushing day for the Steelers, actually. Pretty good rushing numbers there. Frymouth had hit a pretty solid game. Pickens didn't really have that big of a game. Controversial call where the refs blew the play dead. Pickens broke out of a tackle, might have ran it in for a touchdown. Of course, they blew it dead. So who could have guessed the Chiefs getting being the beneficiaries of a questionable call? Who could have guessed? Where have we seen that? But literally every single game since Mahomes has started, basically. Um, and yeah, we get the team stats here. Pretty close for total yardage. I think a good amount of that came when the Chiefs were just in basically full prevent defense toward the end of the game there. Up three scores late, and the Steelers were able to move the ball, kind of just checking it down. Steelers basically giving them that. But the Chiefs defense played very, very well in this game, especially no Chris Jones. I figured that might be a bit hard for them to overcome, but they played a really good game, got a lot of pass rush in this game. Rush yards, again, not pretty much nothing for the Chiefs. Of course, the magic number is 69. Nice. Steelers had a pretty good rushing day, 202 rush yards, but passing yards, Chiefs killed them in. Look at some of these categories. So again, even though the Chiefs' offense looked really good and they've been really good on third down this year, they only went 3 of 10 this game, so they're going to want to clean that up a bit. Hopefully they don't as a Chiefs hater, but they're going to want to clean that up a bit. I'm sure they will, though. Steelers 50% on third down. That's pretty good. I mean, looking at these stats, it's really like, how the hell did the Steelers get blown out? Yeah, the turnovers were big, especially Russ's pick. I'm kind of blanking on the fumble. Kind of blanking on the fumble. I want to say it was on a punt, and the Steelers muffed it. I'm kind of blanking on the fumble there, but yeah, the Chiefs almost had 7 yards per play. That's what they've done all year. They get a good amount of yardage on first and second down to make it third and short usually, and then they convert it. That's one reason why their third down efficiency is as high as it is, like nearly 50%, I think, maybe even a tick above rather. But yeah, unfortunately, this is probably the best the Chiefs have looked all year. Obviously, they're not going to finish 15-1. They have another game against the Broncos, which it's kind of hard to predict. They're going to sit their starters. The Broncos have not been playing very greatly, so who knows? But hopefully the Chiefs get the 15-1 curse, where every team that's finished 15-1 has not won the Super Bowl. So they come out short in the postseason. Hopefully they get that end of the stick there. Steelers are now not in the lead of the AFC North. The Ravens are. And it looks like the Ravens, all they have to do is beat the Browns, and they're the 3 seed. So they should do that, especially them starting Bailey Zappi. So Steelers, 10-3. Oh, boy. Playing bad ball on a losing streak at the wrong time here. They're going to probably get a wild. They're going to really want to hope the Chargers lose and beat the Bengals, get the 5 seed so they can play the Texans. Because they play the Ravens round 1. That is probably not an ideal matchup for them. Much rather play the Texans. But yeah, Steelers peaking or not peaking, playing kind of bad ball at the wrong time. Chiefs, unfortunately, might be heating up at the right time there. Oh boy. Well, really not much to break down about this game. I think the score is pretty self-explanatory. Just an awful, abysmal game for the Texans. It was relatively close early on. The Texans or the Ravens were up 10-0, and the Texans got that safety. And then they had a decent drive. They got it down to the end zone, and then the Ravens defense stopped them. Or actually, that might have been the Ravens defense had to stop them, and then the safety happened. Now, I'm not exactly sure the order. I forget it exactly off the top of my head. But regardless, the safety is the only point the Texans. Their defense literally outscored their offense. Texans' offense really had some difficult times in this game trying to get it going. Ravens' defense looks like it's heating up at the right time, so that's good for them. That's been kind of the issue for them all year, is their defensive penalties. And it looks like they're cleaning both those up as they get into the postseason. So good for the Ravens for getting things cleaned up at the right time. Lamar didn't even do too much this game. I mean, he played good, obviously. He had a nice rushing touchdown. Yeah, he almost had 100 yards rushing. One of his touchdowns was to, who the hell was it? I think Isaiah Likely. He kind of did the Lamar play, like danced left, right, find someone, he found him. That was an insane play. But yeah, passing, I mean, just look at the stats. He didn't even do too much. Obviously, he did very well passing, but he didn't even need to do too much. Derrick Henry had a really good game. Lamar, I mentioned, had some nice rushes. Keaton Mitchell, he was very underrated last year. Good to see him back, get some playing time here. Mark Andrews had one deep reception. Or not, it wasn't even that deep of a reception. It was just a lot of yards after the catch on the sideline there. Of course, Zay Flowers puts up a shitter when I have him in 2 of my teams in the championship. Stroud didn't really not play that great. I mean, I think that stat line speaks for itself. Pretty much nothing in the run game for the Texans. I guess John Mechie got a bit involved. That's good to see. They really, the Texans are just not a good team right now. Nico Collins, I guess, played good, but would like to see a bit more from him there. Uh, I mean, you look at the team stats here, I think it's also pretty self-explanatory. Ravens just dominated in all these categories here. Just a complete mess of a game for the Texans. Just pretty much a disaster for the Texans. Just a bad game. And yeah, they are not playing well. I've said it all year, even when they were like 5-1, I think. I was saying, something just looks off with this team, and now it's really showing. No Diggs is and obviously now Odell is really starting to show. They are just not playing great football at the wrong time. Ravens, though, getting red hot. They're in the division. All they have to, at the division lead, all they have to do is just win against the god awful Browns, starting Bailey Zappi, and they win the division. So they should do that. Texans are locked into the 4 seed, so it doesn't even matter if they win or lose this week. But yeah, they're just not playing good ball at the wrong time, kind of like the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers, I think, are playing better ball than the Texans, but the Ravens, kind of like the Chiefs, are just peaking at the right time, it feels like. That's the big takeaway from that one. Oh, boy. The last Thursday night game of the year was certainly one of the games of all time. I mean, really, 6-3. Like, what the hell did I just watch for like 3+ hours? Oh my God. So yeah, just 3 field goals in this game. That was the all the scoring, the entirety of the scoring. No touchdowns whatsoever. Obviously, both defenses played well. I expected the Seahawks defense to play well against the Bears, even though my gut was kind of telling me maybe the Bears have a randomly good offensive game. But logically, the Seahawks defense should have played really well, and they did. I think I was getting a little bit nervous at the end of the game there because I picked the Seahawks to win, so obviously I was kind of pulling for them a little bit. And I was getting a little nervous once the Bears converted that 3rd and 15 to a Dunze. I'm like, they actually might get a touchdown and win this game. And then obviously the pick happened on 4th down. Kind of some questionable clock management at times to the Bears. I forget the exact situation. I just remember there was some questionable clock management. Yeah, Geno, I don't think played bad. He played a decent game, but obviously the offense didn't do a lot. Charbonnet had a decent game. Heavy workload for him. I'd probably like to see a bit more than 57 rush yards on 15 carries. Not much in the receiving core in general. DK didn't really go off, but 14 yards a catch, that'll work. Yeah, Caleb Williams didn't play a great game, obviously. I don't think he played god awful, but he obviously didn't play a very good game. Not too much in the run game, but a decent workload for DeAndre Swift. Uh, yeah, receiving DJ Moore, even though the Bears' offense has been horrible most of this year, but especially, the past couple weeks, DJ Moore has been getting kind of consistently involved. He's not going off, but he's putting up stat lines like similar to this every week. Looking at the team stats here, I think they're pretty telling of how the game went. Seahawks definitely outplayed the Bears, deserved to win the game, I think. I mean, it was close. A lot of these categories are close. Obviously, it was only a 3-point game, but I would say actually Bears marginally won the time possession battle. They still won it. But yeah, I think these stats are pretty telling of how the game went. Just Bears are Jesus. I mean, I don't even know where to start with them. Clearly, they need to. It's gonna be interesting to see how they hire a head coach because ideally, you would probably want an offensive guy in there for Caleb Williams. And that's obviously the way the league is trending is offensive rather than defensive. So ideally, you want an offensive guy. Apparently, there's a weird report. I don't know if it's true or not that they're trying to. Ryan Poles, their GM, is trying to steer them away from Ben Johnson. I don't know why. Apparently, he thinks his job's at risk if that happens. Ben Johnson's obviously going to be the hot candidate. Everyone's going to want Ben Johnson. That has a head coaching vacancy. Then apparently, I don't think Mike Vrabel. I think Mike Vrabel would be a pretty solid fit for this team too. I'll talk about him when fortunately talk about my team. I think that's the next game, our disaster of a game against the Chargers. I think Mike Vrabel would actually be a pretty good fit with the Bears, even though he's obviously a defensive guy. But not to get too ahead of myself, just talking about this game here. Seahawks won, but they're eliminated from the playoffs. Rams clinched the division, so that sucks for the Seahawks. But I think they maybe a little bit overexceeded expectations this year. I think most people kind of set it into being like the 7-ish to 10 win range. So, they're kind of right in the middle of that with 9. Will they win this week? I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, Seahawks, very up and down team this year, but good win for them, I guess, on the road against, a disaster of a Bears team. But I guess could be sneaky, short week, prime time on the road in Chicago. Bears due for a win. Defense played really well. Offense didn't play great, obviously, but got the job done. So I guess a good solid win, not a solid, but good ugly-ish win for the Seahawks. Bears just at least the defense played well. That's positive from that one at least. Yep, here we go. Here we go. All right. Gonna take a sip of this very interesting citrus twist flavor sparkling ice I got. Hang on, let me take a sip before I talk about this god-awful game. That is an interesting tasting drink. Okay. I mean, I don't even know. All right, so this game obviously was a complete disaster. The Chargers were up 20-0, and Drake May ended up getting a free play touchdown. That was actually good. They were up 17-0. Then Drake May got that touchdown. That was basically the one highlight of this game for us. And then the Chargers ended up getting a field goal. It was really weird. You couldn't really tell what was good or not. It wouldn't have mattered. They still would have kicked our ass anyway. But I think it was good, but some people were, kind of pissed about it. It was I think it was good, but I don't know. You can make an argument otherwise. It reminded me a lot of the field goal Justin Tucker had against us. I want to say like 2013, the 2013 season with the Ravens. We were up 2, I think it was 30-28. They called the field goal good to get the Ravens the win, and it really was kind of questionable if it went in or not. And Belichick was, bullshit about it. He grabbed the official, got fined. I remember how Mike was like, "Oh, there's a few bucks." So kind of similar to that play at least. But the second half, we pretty much had nothing. This is definitely, I think, Drake May's worst game as a pro, which he did get dinged up like literally on like the first or second play of the game. I think he was scrambling and got dinged, and they took him to the locker room. Brissett came in for a drive, and then May came back. So obviously they cleared him, so he must have not been concussed, but he seemed a little off this game. Chargers defense had that kind of weird rough patch the second half of the Bucs game and the first half of that Broncos game Thursday night, but they've got back on track with this game. Only allowed 7, very much shut our offense down this game. Herbert played a really good game. McConkey went off. We could not stop him for the life of us. Quentin Johnson, pretty solid game too. Josh Palmer getting involved. Dobbins had a good game too. Good to see him back. May, I mentioned, didn't play a great game. Not an awful game, but I don't think he played a very good game. Gibson actually looked half decent. Some of those were in garbage time, but Stevenson had 2 carries. He was supposed to be benched to start the game. That's what Mayo told reporters, and then Stevenson started the game. So I don't know what the hell happened there, but he has to have more than 2 carries in a game. We had pretty much nothing in the run game till late, but Gibson kind of had a couple decently good games late, so that kind of might have padded his stats a little bit, but I guess Gibson played good. Pop Douglas caught that touchdown pass, and outside of that, we pretty much had nothing whatsoever. Looking at the team stats here, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Chargers outplayed us. Definitely, I think it's definitely pretty self-explanatory, especially the 29-11 first downs and your total yardage here. Time possession, we couldn't even hold the ball for 20 minutes. Like, really? Like, oh, God. I mean, I didn't expect us to win this game, but I expected it to be close. I thought this was like 24-17 as Chargers going to hold on. Nope, that's not what happened at all because we fucking suck. It's honestly just embarrassing at this point. Um, yep, 2 of 10 on third down. That's a pretty good stat for us. How god awful this game was for us, and yeah, that's kind of this game in general. My thoughts in general. Obviously, I did not expect us to have. I think I literally had us at 4-13, so we actually might beat the Bills and blow the number one pick Sunday because the Bills are going to play their backups. But so I might be right on the dot with that. Who knows? But so obviously I didn't have high expectations for us this year. But I just and I was saying for a while we did have the ability to be sneaky. We had a couple close losses. We were competitive in a lot of games. But a game like this, where most people, pretty much probably 95 out of 100 people would have picked the Chargers to win this game. But out of that 95 that picked the Chargers, and maybe the 5 that picked the Patriots to win this game, pretty much all of them would probably say it's within a 7 to 10ish, maybe 14 at the max point game. It would be relatively close. I don't think anyone would have predicted a bloodbath like this. And because the Chargers, I don't know, our defense, this it just I don't know. Most people thought our defense would play half decent in this game. The Chargers would get a couple good drives offensively, but not go off like they did. Our offense would have a couple decent drives, not get a lot though, and it'd be like, like a 17-24 type of game. I felt like very comfortable that score range. I think most people did around there too. And I don't know, because the Chargers, I don't know, just on a pure talent basis, they're ahead of us, obviously, but I don't think they're like ahead of us to the point of like 33 points makes up for the talent difference, if that makes any sense. I don't think they have enough more. All right, how do I word this? I don't think they have better talent than us that makes up for a 33-point loss and gives them a 33-point win. Talking about the margin of victory or loss there. So I honestly think a big part of this was coaching because talent level, yeah, I don't think is worth a 33-point difference. But Jim Harbaugh, for example, Jesse Minter, even Greg Roman, he can kind of be questionable at times, but I think he doesn't get as much credit as he deserves calling offenses his entire career. But I mean, you got those guys, and we have AVP, DeMarcus Covington, and Mayo. Mayo obviously getting severe heat. Pretty much everyone wants him gone. I think most people want Covington gone that are fans. And then AVP, it kind of seems mixed if people want him gone or not. I think we're going to keep Mayo. Honestly, so here's another thing. I've been very lenient with Mayo this year. Obviously, he has the rebuild excuse. That's probably why he's going to stay. And it's going to look bad if we fire him because we didn't have high expectations. And you can make an argument we had the worst roster going into the year. So we can, it's probably not going to look great if we fire him. But the thing is, it doesn't excuse his coaching. And yes, he's a first year head coach. So he obviously isn't going to be, the greatest head coach of all time in his rookie year, especially this roster. But his coaching decision's been very conservative and passive. And to me, he just seems like a soft coach. Like, I'm sorry, but like Belichick example would rip people in the film room, they'd correct the mistake. I can't see Mayo ripping someone in the film room and then them being, incentivized to correct their mistakes. Things like that, for example. He just seems too passive, too conservative for me. I don't think Mayo's the guy to get us back to a not even a top tier team because that's going to be a while for us, but like a middle of the pack team even that's like competing for a playoff spot, like the Broncos, for example. I I kind of do feel bad saying fire Mayo because he did get the shit end of the stick, but he knew what he was signing up for this year. But I think we should have hired Mike Vrabel from the jump. I think he would be a perfect fit with us. If Mike Vrabel was our head coach this year, I don't think we would have been great, but I think we would have been like a 6-ish, maybe 7-win team, maybe 5 at the minimum, where some of the games that we lost that were close, like that Colts game, for example, we would have won. What's another one? That Titans game, we probably would have won. Games like that, I think Vrabel would have probably won if he was the head coach for us this year. I mean, it's just Mike Vrabel, his coaching style is perfect, getting the most out of his players, even if they're not the The best, obviously, Titans. He did that. He took them to the conference championship game when they only went 9-7. They had Ryan Tannehill, or as I called it, Ryan Midahill. Even though he actually played pretty solid those couple of years on the Titans, he was their starter up until the last year, really. Um, I guess the year prior to, but 2022 and 2023 are what I'm talking about. Obviously, Levis took over kind of the back half of that year, but towards the middle. But you guys know what I mean. But yeah, Mike Vrabel. I mean, he's a very gritty coach. Regardless of the players, he's going to have them competing, playing competitive, close games. I feel like regardless of who's in there. I mean, 2021, he got the 1 seed with the Titans. And he had the most IR players and the most players signed to a roster in NFL history, if I remember right. And I mean, obviously, his connections with us, he obviously played for us. He just got inducted to the Hall of Fame. He has a really good relationship with Kraft. He was simply an advisor for the Browns, and his contract just ended. He's getting interviews. I think I saw the Jets interviewed him earlier. And apparently, the reports are he wants to coach here. So I just would have hired Vrabel in the first place. I think if he's available, we should try to hire him. Which, again, I do feel bad saying fire Mayo, but I think Mike Vrabel is the far better coach for us. I just don't think Mayo's the guy. And yes, obviously, the roster's not there. So, you can't expect too much of Mayo, but just we should not be losing a game by 33 points like this. I mean, obviously the Chargers are very good, very well coached, obviously, but it's one thing if this is like to the Lions or something, or the Vikings, but to the Chargers, who again on a talent level I don't think are exceptionally like miles and miles ahead of us. It's just absolutely unacceptable. And yeah, I don't even know. I think we're gonna keep Mayo, but I if we do though, obviously some team is gonna hire Mike Vrabel. We're gonna miss out on him. Almost certainly some team will hire him, I'm sure. I think Mayo should be on a very short leash next year. I don't think we'll fire him mid-season if we do keep him, but if we put up another shitter next year, I think he definitely has to go. Because again, if he stays, the only reason he's going to stay is because we don't want to fire him as a rookie head coach with arguably the worst roster in the league. But it's just that again doesn't excuse the coaching decisions he's made this year and his coaching style. And yes, I probably do believe he will be a better coach in year 2 than year 1. But I just still think Mike Vrabel. We should try to hire Mike Vrabel. So yeah, there's my rant on that. Didn't mean to get too off topic. This game just really, really set it in for me how pissed off I am at my team this year. Just how fucking awful we are. Just really pissed me off this game. So yeah, there's my rant on that game. But Chargers are in the playoffs. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens with them. I'm so excited for the playoffs. So excited for the playoffs. Yeah, playoffs. Obviously, we are. Well, I guess if you reverse our record, we're in the playoffs. But obviously, we are a bit of a ways away from the playoffs. But Chargers, gonna be interesting what happens to them in the playoffs. Obviously, really good game for them. Took care of business. More than took care of business. Just an absolute fucking disaster for us, per usual. Okay, gotta take another sip after that rant here. Oh boy, so an actual good game. Broncos Bengals. This was a hell of a game. I was a bit nervous because obviously the Bengals won, but the Broncos caught a lot of breaks this game. Like Jamar dropping that touchdown, he makes 99 out of 100 times with that catch. The Bengals, so their defense actually it didn't play great. It played good at kind of the start of the game. The second half, it kind of got the ball moved on it. The Broncos put up some points. Obviously, that last drive was just unacceptable on the Bengals defense. But overtime, when the Bengals punted that ball, I'm like, oh, that's game. I literally was texting one of the chatsmen with all my friends. I'm like, well, that's game because the Bengals defense is just going to get the ball moved on it like no problem at the snap of a finger. They forced not one, but 2 3-and-outs. So credit to the Bengals defense. It's obviously been god awful most of this year. It's the reason they have 8 losses. Certainly not the offense's fault. But yeah, the Broncos caught a couple breaks early on, so I was like, oh, the Bengals defense is really going to have to step up because the offense isn't going off. But then the offense kind of cleaned some things up for the Bengals. played better as the game progressed. They were up 7-3 at half. Then they got the field goal. Broncos scored. It was 10 to maybe the Broncos scored and then the Bengals scored the touchdown. I forget off the top of my head. But yeah. Anyway, a lot of people talking about the late game clock management situation. So basically, the Bengals were at the goal line. It was a tie game, and there was around, I believe, a minute and just on the 2 minute warning, I believe, maybe a minute and 40. I know. I think it was a minute and 40 something seconds. I want to say something like that. Broncos had one timeout, I believe. One timeout, I believe, and it was second and goal. And Chase Brown had a walk-in lane to the end zone, and or maybe it was first and goal. I forget off the top of my head, but Chase Brown had a walk-in touchdown if he wanted it. He went down intentionally, and of course, he hurt himself too. So of course, I had Chase Brown. So instead of a walk-in in my one of my championship games, so instead of a walk-in touchdown for my team, my opponent is Burrow and Higgins, who both went off in this game. So that injury just completely derailed my year. And that's the team I always get screwed over with injuries every year. And I've been relatively healthy this year besides Nico Collins, but I still made it to the championship game. And of course, an injury is going to be pretty ironic that an injury kind of fucked my season over in that one. Lost both my championship games. I was so pissed off. But anyway, I think he's questioned. It looked bad at first. I think he's questionable. It's good to see that he's probably not as bad as it seemed at first. But so yeah, Chase Brown. So it was an injury timeout. So the Bengals were charged the timeout. So the Broncos got to keep their timeout. So then it was second and goal, and Burrow just snuck it in. They got the touchdown, but they left the Broncos with the timeout. So the Bengals are up 7. Broncos moved the ball down the field, and then Bo Nix on a 4th down ended up just heaving it. And who the hell caught it? Let me look here. Yeah, it must have been. I think it was Marvin Mims caught it, and there was like 6 seconds left or something like that, or 16, somewhere around. Very little time left on the clock, and Sean Payton was signaling to go for 2. I'm like, well, that's game. The Broncos are going to get this and then win, go to the playoffs, and the Bengals season is going to be over. They ended up having to review the touchdown because it's like very close. They confirmed it. Sean Payton kicked the extra point, and I'm like, well, the Bengals just caught a massive break there because I think if the Broncos went for 2, they probably would have won the game, but who knows? Then in overtime, the Bengals got the ball, moved it a bit, and then Joe Burrow got sacked. They had to punt. Defense forced a 3-and-out, as I mentioned. Then the Bengals, again, I keep saying the Broncos got some breaks. The Bengals got it in chip shot field goal range for Cade York, and he missed it. I'm like, Joe Burrow is going to absolutely like smash his head into the bench on the sideline. He's going to be beyond pissed off at this point. And then again, the Bengals defense stepped up to their credit. They forced a 3-and-out. And then Joe Burrow and company, I think, were like, you know what, fuck this. Like, we're not messing around. We're just going to fucking pass this thing. We are not taking any chances at the field goal fumbling Joe Burrow. And I don't blame him at this point. He's like, fuck this. He's like, I'm just going to win the game myself. And him and Higgins went off. He had a deep pass on the sideline to Higgins. Then he got a touchdown to Higgins. So obviously a really good game. Bengals keeping their playoff hopes alive. Ironically, they're going to have to hope the Broncos lose again. Maybe so it's an extra bit of motivation for the Broncos to not that they need any more with their playoff hopes on the line. Pretty much, they can still get in if they lose, but they're most likely going to have to win to get in. So maybe even a bit more extra motivation for the Broncos to beat the Chiefs because that means the team that just beat them in this game is out. The Bengals. Yeah, Bo Nix played a really good game. That interception came late. That was costly. Bengals defense stepped up on that one again. Because Higgins fumbled it. I'm like, well, again, that's probably game because the Bengals defense is going to have to step up, and I have very little faith in it to do so, and it did. So credit to them for that. He also had the biggest like air yardage touchdown, like a 60-something yard bomb to Marvin Mims, I'm pretty sure. And so that was nice. Yeah, Jaleel McGough. So yeah, Broncos had a pretty good. They kind of gave up on it late, but they were having a good start to the game rushing. Uh, 69 yards, 6.9 per carry. Nice for Jaleel McLaughlin there. Marvin Mims had a good game, as I mentioned. Sutton had a pretty consistent game, had that touchdown on a fade route. That was pretty nice. Um, that was pretty much their entire passing offense was Mims and Sutton. Joe Burrow played a phenomenal game, per usual. He's in. People are talking about he should be the MVP if they make the playoffs. Not to toot my own horn here, I had Joe Burrow as my preseason pick for MVP, and he would win it if the Bengals defense wasn't god awful and they had a couple more wins, like maybe even 11, probably 12ish. That would maybe 13. Uh, if yeah, the Bengals had one of the top tier records, I think Joe Burrow would certainly be the MVP this year. Most of my preseason picks have gone to hell, and I look like an idiot. But I did have that one, so at least I'm pretty close to that one. Chase Brown didn't have too much going in the run game, but 67 yards, obviously not a lot, but some of them were big, so good for him there. T. Higgins went off, as I mentioned. Chase got off to a slow start, but played a good game. Mike Gesicki, been very underrated. My old guy from the past. Yoshi Vosh, kind of underrated. I like him. Had a pretty decent game. Look at the team stats here. So again, to me, I think the Bengals definitely outplayed the Broncos. Broncos were a little fortunate, I felt, to be in it. The Bengals were kind of just shooting themselves in the foot. That's, I think, a big part of why the game was so close. I mean, just look at the stats here. They had 15 more first downs than the Broncos. They had sort of close to 200 total yards than the Broncos. I guess yards per play were close, but yeah, a lot of these stats I think are pretty telling. Bengals, I mean, you probably think the Bengals blew them out looking at these stats here. But yeah, I think it's pretty telling of how the game went here. I'm just looking at my phone. But yeah, I think these stats are pretty telling. Really good game. Broncos, if they missed, I mean, obviously I'm a Patriots fan, so I'm not a big Broncos fan. But it's going to be kind of disheartening if they make the playoffs because they've lost a couple in a row, but they've overexceeded, I think, pretty much everyone's expectations. Maybe even like the most optimistic Broncos fans' expectations this year. And it's just going to be, they've been on a losing streak, so it's going to be a bit disheartening if they make it. I think we can all agree, though, that the Bengals, out of them, the Broncos, and the Dolphins, are, without a doubt, the most dangerous 7 seed out of the three of them. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Hopefully, the Bengals can make the playoffs. It looks like they're going to get a bit of a break because Tua is not going to play, so that obviously gives the Jets more of a chance to upset the Dolphins, even though they played god awful too. But yeah, good win for the Bengals in this one. Broncos are, yeah, just they're on a tough losing streak. Couple close losses really sucks for them. It's going to be interesting to see if they can make the postseason. Last Saturday game was Cardinals Rams. Defensive game all the way. There was only one touchdown. Kyren Williams got it. Cardinals at the end of the game. I thought, of course, I had Rams money lines. I'm like, oh, here we go. The Rams could have just iced the game, pretty much getting first down, ran out the clock from there, most likely. And incomplete, and the Cardinals are marching on the field. I'm like, yep, Cardinals are going to win the game. First and goal at the 5 yard line. There's plenty of time left. They're moving the ball, running it, and they attempted to pass, and it got picked off. McBride had the touchdown too. He turned a little too late after Murray like fastballed it in there, so a bit of a miscommunication. But they had the touchdown anyway. They should have ran it there. Obviously, easy to second guess it now that obviously we know the result of the play. But yeah, the second half, the Cardinals definitely outplayed the Rams. Honestly, I thought the Cardinals were going to win the game the way it was going. Rams' offense has been very weird lately. Their defense has been stepping up. Just very weird game from the Cardinals, or very weird games, rather, not from the Cardinals, from the Rams' offense lately. Kyler, I actually thought played a pretty solid game. The obviously 2 picks, you don't want to see that. maybe not a really solid game, but I think Kyler played good enough to win. I certainly think the Cardinals played well enough to put up more than 9 points on the board. James Conner got hurt. So, of course, James Conner, before the game report comes out, oh, good to go. Expect James Conner to get his full workload. Yep. Well, that did not happen. He got me, what, 4 points in total? I'm getting another text here. Looking at my phone. So I'm like, that's great. He got ruled out week 18, so his knee must be, pretty bad. He's going to want to be in there. He's a warrior. But Michael Carter actually played a pretty good game. Trey McBride did a really good game, too. He finally got that touchdown. Should have hit another one. They definitely were trying to force in the ball in the end zone, drawing up some plays designed for him to score. Should have had that touchdown at the end of the game again. Martin Harrison Jr. had a pretty good game. That was pretty much their passing offense, those two guys. Stafford, again, kind of just a meh game from him. Kyren Williams, Stafford's, it's just been weird lately, and so is the entire offense in general. Kyren Williams had a pretty good game. Puka had a good game. Kupp, very weird from him lately. I don't know what's happened to Cooper Kupp. Look at the team stats here. I think they're pretty telling of how the game went. It kind of felt like the Rams are very fortunate to win the game here. It felt like the Cardinals did outplay them, especially in the second half. So that, that interception that's pretty telling, that last interception of how this game went. The Cardinals moved the ball down the field. They had the game, it looks like, and then just one play, and the Rams end up capitalizing to win off of it. I mean, just look at these team stats. The Cardinals definitely outplayed the Rams, it felt like, especially the stats suggest that too. So Rams may be a bit fortunate to win this one. Seahawks are probably just absolutely demoralized watching the Rams win like that and go on to clinch the division. Otherwise, the Rams-Seahawks game would be for the division this week. So the Seahawks are going to be absolutely demoralized. Cardinals defense, very solid game. Defense has been, the Cardinals have just been a weird team in general this year. Defense kind of been up and down, but pretty good performance from them. Going to be interesting. They play the Niners this week. Maybe they can get a win, finish 8-9, go into the offseason with some optimism, but maybe not so much because they had some playoff hopes. They were leading the division for a while, a couple weeks ago, so they might have had playoff aspirations, but, they only won 4 or 5 games last year, I think. So, 7 to 8 wins, that's a good improvement for a team that's, and leading the division for a bit, getting on a hot streak, like 2 games, I want to say about 500. I think they were like 6-4. So, yeah, Cardinals, I don't think they should be too demoralized. After their bye, it's kind of been a mess for them. Yeah, pretty decent improvement from last year, I would say. Pretty good, I would say. But yeah, Rams, they keep winning mainly due to their defense. So is the offense going to figure it out? We saw that they can at the snap of a finger like they did against the Bills. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the Rams. Depending on who they met, well, they're in a matchup. They're actually benching their starters this week. So it looks like they're probably going to lose. They play the Seahawks again, as I mentioned. And they're going to get the 4 seed, which means they're going to play the loser of Lions-Vikings. If I'm the Rams, I'm trying to win this game so I can get the 3 seed. Because then rather than the loser of Lions-Vikings, you would play the who the hell, either the Packers or Washington, which is most likely going to be Washington, probably, assuming they can beat the Cowboys, which could be a bit of a sneaky game. But I would probably pick them to beat the Commanders. I'm going to probably pick them to lose against either Detroit or the Vikings, but even though it is the Vikings, they did beat the Vikings earlier in the year, and they definitely could beat the Lions. That game went to OT week 1. It felt like the Lions might have been a bit fortunate to win that game. Rams kind of felt like they had that one. But anyway, not to get too ahead of myself here. Kind of just a grinded out ugly win for the Rams. Maybe a bit fortunate for them to win this one. Cardinals, I wanted to finish with a winning record. Definitely should have won this one. They're going to be demoralized for this loss there. Cowboys Eagles. Oh, I think the score for this one is pretty self-explanatory. This game was actually close early on. Cowboys moved the ball down the field. Then Cooper Rush threw a pick six, and they went right down the field and scored again. I'm like, okay, this could be a game. And then the offense of the Eagles didn't really do too much until like midway through the second quarter. It kind of figured some things out. Scored 17, and then yeah, the second half they scored another 17 unanswered. Cowboys only had 7 points. Their offense kind of shut down after their first two drives. Kenny Pickett, he didn't play a great game, had a really bad play that's getting meme where he like fell and lost control of the ball. I don't know what the hell happened there. Kenny, he had a couple nice deep balls, so pause. A couple nice deep passes that looked pretty good. He ended up getting hurt, and Tanner McKee came into the game, and my opponent in one of my leagues had Brown, Saquon, and Smith. I'm like, all right, well that should take Brown and Devontae Smith away, but they're just going to spam the shit out of Saquon with the lead and Tanner McKee in there. Yet Tanner McKee threw two touchdowns. Of course, one of them to Brown and one of them to Smith. And I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me, dude. But anyway, Saquon had a really good day rushing, but he didn't get a touchdown. They're benching him for Week 18. A lot of people were pissed, wanted to break Dickerson's record. Saquon kind of seemed a little pissed about it too, but kind of took the high road. You know, we're playing for much better things, much bigger things, rather. But yet, even Tanner McKee looked pretty solid in this one. Devontae Smith went off, realizing I was playing him in fantasy, the fantasy championship game. AJ Brown didn't really do too much with that touchdown. It's obviously good. Cooper Rush started off hot, then kind of shit the bed the rest of the game. Rico Dowdle had a pretty decent rushing day, too. He's been coming alive more and more as the year progresses. That's good to see. Maybe a nice gem in the draft there for the Cowboys. Brandon Cooks had a pretty decent game. Tolbert caught that touchdown. It was actually kind of a nice catch. Looking at the team stats here, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Eagles definitely outplayed the Cowboys. I think these stats suggest that. Yeah, Eagles, again, I think last week against the Commanders, they kind of got their due for a loss game out of the way. Just kind of a weird game up and down from both their offense and defense. I felt like, got that, must be really frustrating loss to the Commanders. I think they just got that out of the way. In this game, they're back on track. Cowboys, again, interesting game for a bit at the start, and then the Eagles just pulled away. Cowboys, gonna be interesting. They're gonna have an interesting offseason. Eagles are heating up at the well, not even heating up. They've been playing really well, but a nice bounce back game after the loss against Washington. They are locked into the 2 seed. So they're either going to play the Packers or the Commanders, which those are both dangerous 7 seeds, especially the Packers. I think they're better than the Commanders, the Packers. But the Commanders obviously beat the Eagles, even though they, I think, were a bit lucky and fortunate to do so. And then the first game, the Eagles were trailing the Commanders, even though the Eagles were kind of playing like shit that game. They played like a C plus game and won. But still, both games were close with the Eagles. So if the Eagles play the Commanders round 1, that could be interesting. I think it's going to be the Packers, but who knows? That might be even more interesting. The Packers going to be the most dangerous 7 seed of all time if they get it. Or you could maybe argue the Bengals too if they get it this year. But not the 7 seed has obviously been in place for very long. Obviously, the Packers were a very dangerous 7 seed last year. But going to be interesting to see what happens with the Eagles in the playoffs. Cowboys, who knows? Maybe they can just get a win. Right into the offseason with some optimism. But going to be interesting to see their offseason. Panthers, Bucks. So this game was close for a while. The Bucks jumped out to an early lead. The Panthers in the second quarter, they put up 7. It looked like they were in a field goal. They had a nice drive at the end of the half, getting the field goal range, but they missed it. And then the second half, the Bucks just really took control of the game. They got a block punt for a touchdown after they showed a duck on the field. The offense could not be stopped. Of course, my opponent is Baker. Puts up the best game of his career, probably. 5 incomplete. He had the same amount of touchdown passes as he did incompletions. Bucky Irving went off. Panthers' run defense got awful. Think the Bucks definitely capitalized on that. They should have ran it more the first matchup. They definitely fixed that this game. Mike Evans, of course, I have a prop bet for him to get 100 yards and a touchdown. He obviously got 2 touchdowns, so that part of it hit. Finished 3 yards shy of 100 yards. So, of course, just missed out on it per usual. He did have a catch that would have put him over 100 yards, but he didn't get the first down, and there was a penalty on the Panthers, so they ended up accepting the penalty, so it negated that, of course. Bucky Irving had a screen pass that went a long way rather. So that's where a lot of his receiving yards come from there. Bryce Young, I actually think played a decent game, even though they got blown out. Obviously, you'd like to see a bit better completion percentage. I actually think he had a pretty decent game. Had a nice deep ball touchdown and had a nice touchdown drive on their opening possession. Pretty much nothing in the run game. Thielen had a good game, and pretty much nothing outside of him from the receiving core. I mean, it's with the team stats here. I think it tells the story of this game pretty well. Bucks had they had 551 yards of offense. The Panthers had 204. So the Bucks more than doubled their yardage. That's pretty self-explanatory how this game went. They had 20 more first downs than the Panthers. My God. Really good third down efficiency, dominated time possession. Yeah, Panthers didn't even turn the ball over, and this is what happened. So, yeah, definitely a very good game from the Bucks. Obviously, with the Falcons losing to the Commanders, they just have to simply beat the Saints, and they win the division for the fourth year in a row. My God. So yeah, Bucks should have the division locked down. They just have to win it in, which they should. Panthers are going to be in for an interesting offseason. They've been playing better ball. It's going to be interesting to see if they keep Bryce Young. And I think they should give him another year. He's been, playing pretty decent lately, at least. Definitely improving, and massive improvement from the first time he was benched around earlier in this year. So yeah, going to be interesting to see what happens to the Panthers in the offseason, who they get, who they draft, if they keep Bryce Young or not. Bucks, kind of a sleeper team. Depending on who they play in the playoffs, they could make some noise. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with them, but obviously a really good game for the Bucks in that one. Jets Bills, another game where I think the scoreboard is pretty self-explanatory. Just a complete disaster for the Jets. Their defense actually was playing decent in the first half, and it was keeping them in the game. Their offense just did absolutely nothing in this game until Tyrod Taylor came in. They got 2 touchdowns after Taylor came in. The Bills put their backups in, but still, I mean, Tyrod Taylor looked pretty solid in the very limited action he played. Rodgers just a horrible disaster game for him. A lot of people are like, yep, this is it for him. He needs to retire. Jets are apparently moving on from both him and Davante Adams. So talk about a failure. I mean, this is probably just the single, maybe not the, but certainly one of the most disappointing single seasons of all time for a football team, the Jets this year. At least Garrett Wilson, I guess, had a good game. Maybe not a good game, but a decent game. Conklin had a decent game too. Adams, at least he got a couple catches. Pretty much very little in the run game. Isaiah Davis averaged 11, almost 12 yards a carry. I think a lot of that was in garbage time. Breece Hall didn't really get too much going, but 4.5 yards per carry, that'll work. Josh Allen had a pretty good game, had an insane touchdown. Kind of a bit lucky that he just threw like a Hail Mary up pretty much, and even Romo was like, oh boy. And Coleman ended up catching it. I'm like, yep, that describes this game pretty well. Trubisky had a touchdown on a screen pass, of course, 69 yards. Nice again. It's like the third time in this video someone said 69 yards. Or 100 or some 169. You guys know what I mean. Yeah, James Cook had a pretty good day rushing. Well, not a pretty good, a decent game rushing, I would say, that touchdown. Receiving, decent balance between the Bills there. Amari Cooper had an insane touchdown catch. I think they're definitely look out for Amari Cooper to maybe have a big, maybe not a big, but a more involved postseason than what he's been having since he joined them in the regular season. I think they're definitely saving some things for the postseason, the Bills. So I think a lot of what they're saving has to do with Amari Cooper. So look out for him to maybe make some noise this postseason. Looking at the team stats here, I think they're pretty self-explanatory. The Bills just killed the Jets in pretty much everything here. Yards per play, I guess, was relatively close, but only 3 more first downs to the Bills, but just an absolute disaster. I mean, 120 penalty yards for the Jets, 16 penalties. That's just horrible. I I guess some of these stats are relatively close, but the Bills just dominated this game. It was relatively close early on at the half, and then in the second half, the Bills just went off. So they're locked into the 2 seed. They play us this week, the Pats. Josh Allen looks like he's going to go out for one play, probably just hand it off, then just have him come to the sideline so he can keep his starting streak intact. So it'll be interesting how that game plays out, I guess. The Jets just obviously I mentioned just beyond a disaster of a year for them. They are just that team is just a literal dumpster fire right now. Coming out to Gangsta's Paradise and they just get fucking blown off the field. Oh my! And then Josh Allen's looking at them from the tunnel. That's become a meme as they're walking out to the dawn. Just an absolute disaster for the Jets. I just don't even know where this team goes from here, honestly. I mean, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens to the Jets. They interviewed Vrabel. I think he'd be a good fit for them. But does he really want to go there with the quarterback uncertainty and them losing Adams and then Garrett Wilson might be unhappy and just they're just a disaster. The owner situation with Woody Johnson, just a shit show for the Jets. And as a Patriots fan, happy to see that, I guess. But Bills, good game for them. They clinched the 2 seed. Looks like they're going to be able to rest some guys against us this week. Colts Giants. Well, talk about a random game. The Giants offense just went off in this game. The Colts defense played awful. They could not tackle anyone to save their lives. Neighbors went off in this game. Had a touchdown late where I think the Colts were going to get a stop. And I thought that's just a Joe Flacco at 125 rush yards. But yeah, Neighbors could not be stopped. He had 7 for 171 and 2 touchdowns. Had that touchdown late where like multiple players missed tackles on him. Just unacceptable. And the Colts defense has been playing solid ball the back half of this year. I'm starting out rough. So very weird game from them. Disappointing, obviously. Drew Lock balled out at a really good game. Tyrone Tracy had a pretty would like to see a bit more yards per carry. A decent game from him. Neighbors I mentioned went off. Wan'Dale Robinson went up. Just the whole offense had a really good game overall. Flacco had a really good game too. The 2 picks were kind of costly, but he had a really good game. He was slinging it out there. Jonathan Taylor had a good game too. Alec Pierce, he had a good game. Pittman had a good game. Decent balance there from the Colts receivers. You look at the team stats here. It's like, okay, well, how did the Giants win this game? Turnovers. That was a big one right there. And they stopped the Colts on a 4th and short. When they were down 8, looked like the Colts were getting some momentum. They stopped them on a 4th and short. That was big. Yeah, I mean, both offenses had really good games. I mean, the Colts offense certainly did more than enough to win this game. Just their defense was god awful. It was like watching the Bengals defense most of this year. Just absolutely unacceptable performance in their defense with playoffs on the line against the worst team in football. I still think the Giants are worse than us, even though we had the first overall pick now. But oh, excuse me here. I just friggin' coughed and I think I went a little bit too hard on ab day, and I think my friggin' abs just like died when I just coughed there. My God, that hurt. But anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, Colts defense just absolutely unacceptable. Everyone is ripping the Colts. Pat McAfee ripped them on Twitter. Everyone's just Anthony Richardson. His teammates are saying that he needs to step up, do his part. He just got ruled out again this week. Not that they're out of the playoffs, so not that it matters too much. But I wonder if Anthony Richardson wants to take the L to my crowd now after having historically the worst completion percentage in NFL history for a player with the amount of career starts he has, and now he's eliminated. Even though he didn't start this game, his team just got eliminated to the god awful Giants, who can't score to save their lives, and they put up damn near 50 points in this game. So I wonder if Richardson wants to take the L now. Not going to forget that. God, I don't like to hold grudges, but that just pissed me off. So I don't know why, but again, he did have the right to do it. He won the game, had that touchdown drive. I think he was very fortunate to do so because he didn't play very good that game. I think we outplayed them. They got lucky to win. and especially the last play with Christian Barmore getting tackled from behind. I think he would have stopped Richardson on that QB power run, but who knows? I guess, do it all you want. You won that game, but look where you are now, Richardson. I don't want to seem like too much of a hater here. That just pissed me off so much when he did that after the game. Not after the game, but right after the 2-point conversion. But yeah, I think these stats pretty telling of how the game went. The Colts kind of outplayed them in some categories. It's just the turnovers killed them. Giants had a good amount of penalties too. You would figure that that would hurt them more than it did maybe. But yeah, the turnovers just kind of hurt the Colts. One of them was deep in Giants territory. It looked like they were going to score. They didn't. So yeah, just turnovers kind of hurt the Colts. Just obviously an absolute disappointing performance nonetheless, to say the least, for the Colts in this game. Just an absolute disappointment for the Colts in this one. Giants just blew the first overall pick. Most of their fans, I think, are pissed. I'm sure my team will beat the Bills this week, knowing us, and we'll blow the first overall pick, which I don't. If we get the first, obviously, I want us to. Again, I never root for my team to lose, so I'm not going to be too upset if we lose, get the first overall pick. Obviously, we don't need a quarterback, so I think it's a prime opportunity to do what the Bears did a couple years ago and just package the pick for a team that wants to trade up for a quarterback. Unless, Nick Wright has that absolutely delusional take that we should maybe trade May and get a top quarterback like Shador or my blank or Cam Ward and maybe even hire Dion. He said, I'm like, what a delusional take. But anyway, yeah, back to this game. Just turnovers killed the Colts. Just obviously disappointing. They had a really good shot if they won this game at making the playoffs, and obviously now they're out after losing to the Giants. So really disappointing for the Colts. Their fan base is just going to be beyond pissed. I don't blame them. Obviously, the Colts, as a Patriots fan, a bit satisfying to see them lose in a pivotal game like this. But and yeah, thank you, Giants, for giving us the first overall pick at least. That's a big takeaway from that one. At least we had the first overall pick as of now. Will we blow it? Probably. Speaking of high draft position, Tank Bowl. The Raiders won the Tank Bowl. They won the game, but by doing that, the Saints got a step closer to winning the Tank Bowl, improving their draft position. This game making some people think twice, should the Raiders fire Antonio Pierce? And again, they've only won 2 games in a row. It's not like they're on this monster win streak. It was against the Saints, who were just beat beyond belief. Most people were picking the Raiders. I was a little surprised. I actually felt fairly confident with the Saints. Well, I look like an idiot saying that now. Obviously, the Saints got outplayed. They didn't deserve to win this game. They were up 7-3 at one point. They didn't have a flea flicker touchdown, but outside of that, that was pretty much their entire offense. Aiden O'Connell had a pretty solid game in this one. Amir Abdul, he had a really good game too. They haven't been able to run the ball. I figured it'd be a disaster for them trying to in this game, but they were able to. I think probably the best game they have all year, honestly. Off the top of my head that I can remember at least. Brock Bowers had a good game, set multiple rookie records. He's having a hell of a year. Jacoby Myers, my old guy from the Pats, had a nasty route that he got the touchdown on. That was sick. Had a really good game. Well, he didn't go off, but he still had a good game. Rattler didn't play a great game. Just not as bad as against the Packers, but not a great game. 2 picks obviously hurts. He was their leading rusher, though. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I cannot believe his fall off. I mean, he had a really good rookie year at the Chiefs. Then after that, they just, like 2021, they used him too. But then when they drafted Pacheco, he just fell off a cliff and disappeared. He had to come in because Kendre Miller got hurt. Juwan Johnson had a couple nice catches in this one. So did Foster Moreau, but not much outside of that. We'll get the team stats here. I think they're pretty telling of how this game went. Raiders, I definitely think outplayed the Saints, deserved to win the game. Defense has been kind of underrated this year. The Raiders, so good for them to having a good defense game. Again, not going up against the best competition, obviously, with the Saints, with Rattler and the injured to hell Saints, but still a good performance nonetheless. 9 more first downs. That's pretty telling stat. Only 1 third down conversion out of 10 for the Saints. That's pretty telling. Yeah, the Raiders kind of dominated time possession at about 16 more minutes, maybe around 20 seconds up for the Raiders there. But yeah, definitely a good game for the Raiders, making them think twice. They want to fire Antonio Pierce, maybe. They definitely, I think, have their chances blown at the top pick. I think mathematically they can get it if I remember right, but I think it's a very much a long shot. It's very much a long shot. I don't think they will get it. Who knows though? Week 18, a bunch of weird shit can happen. But yeah, not too much to talk about this game. Just good win for the Raiders. Saints didn't look too good. Raiders, at least they're ending their season on a high-ish note, I guess. Titans Jags. So this game kind of went as I expected. I expected the Jags to win, just kind of get, you know, things going. Offensively, Mac Jones played a pretty good game. Titans defense has dropped off a bit lately. Uh, Brian Thomas had a pretty good game. That touchdown, hit a nice sideline grab too. Parker Washington, a nice touchdown too. Not too much in the run game for the Jags, but a decent game from ETN. Uh, Titans, Mason Rudolph, he didn't play a great game, but he didn't play awful either. The Titans nearly, at the end of the game there, they had a fourth down. I think it was Westbrook Akina. He was wide open on a vertical route. And I'm like, did they seriously just blow the game there? And then I forget which DB it was, the Jags. They had a nice knockdown play. So that was nice for the Jags. That was a nice play. Uh, they're starting Will Levis this week. The Titans, it's like, what the hell are they doing at quarterback at this point? Who knows? Brian Callahan, he has a really good chance of getting fired, I think. I'm not a Titans fan, but I'm not the biggest Brian Callahan fan of what I've seen this year from a coaching perspective. Tajay Spears had a pretty good game. Calvin Ridley had a pretty good game too. So did Okonkwo. Kine had a couple catches too. She might have had that touchdown at the end of that pass and get batted down. If I remember, I think Okonkwo was missed by Rudolph for a touchdown like late, maybe the play before the fourth down there that I was just talking about with the pass getting knocked down. Well, at the team stats here, you're probably thinking like, how the hell did the Titans win this game? They outplayed the Jags in pretty much everything. Honestly, I'm trying to remember the interception when I want to say it was like a tipped interception. It was relatively early. So from these stats, I guess you can probably argue the Titans outplayed the Jags, should have won the game. The Jags defense actually has been playing decent ball lately. They haven't been playing the best competition, but they definitely have been playing much better lately than they were at the start of the year. So credit to them for that. Not that they're playing for anything. Titans defense on the opposite end I mentioned has definitely dropped off a bit. Um, yeah, honestly, looking at these stats, I'm a little surprised the Titans outplayed them in pretty much everything here, except turnovers. They only had one, but yeah, Jags defense coming up clutch at the end with that stop though. Good for the Jags. I mean, they're obviously a bad team, a disaster of a year for them, but good for them to get a win in this one. Maybe try to end the season on a high note. They're going to have an interesting offseason to see what happens. And Doug Peterson, I'm shocked they did not fire him after that Lions debacle. Because going into that game, it was, I talked about it in my videos, it was going into that game, a report came out that if they get blown out, the Jags ownership is going to consider some changes. Well, they got blown out and then some. They got a 50 bomb put up on them. They put up 6 points, if I remember right, and they still kept Doug Peterson. It's going to be weird to see what happens with them. I think they should move on, but who the hell knows? I haven't really heard anything about that coaching situation actually. Titans, I mentioned Brian Callahan. Going to be interesting to see how they handle that situation. But yeah, just not a great game from the Titans in this one. Jags, I guess, good to grind out a win in that one. Dolphins Browns. Think the score is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, I don't know what the hell the Browns are doing. And I'm a Joe Burrow fan, so I'm kind of a Bengals guy. And obviously, the Dolphins needed to lose one of their last two games. It was 3-3 for a good portion of this game. The Dolphins got a field goal as the second half, or the first half rather, expired. And then the Browns defense certainly did their part to win this game. They contained the Dolphins offense most of this game, and the Dolphins had Huntley in there still. But Huntley actually played a really solid game, as you can see here. Had a couple nice scrambles too. They had pretty much nothing in the run game. Of course, HA needed a big game from him. Gets benched most of the second half. Doesn't do anything. I think it was just the way that the Browns defense was playing. It was just matchup wise better to have the other backs in there, but still, like, come on, you're gonna get A-Chain a bit more involved. But anyway, what am I? Oh yeah, Tyler Huntley was their leading rusher. That's what I was gonna say. A couple nice scrambles, late, so then throughout the game. So pretty good game from Huntley overall. What was I gonna say though? Yeah, Browns. So I was kind of pulling for them to win this game because you need the Dolphins to lose one of their last two. Pulling for the Bengals to make the playoffs. They were in a good position to lose this game, but their offense just could not do anything. The Browns, and I don't know what the hell. I'm actually convinced that they, not convinced, but I seriously am questioning if they're intentionally tanking or not. I mean, clearly you're out of the playoffs, so you're playing for nothing. So I understand starting DTR for that reason because Winston was turning over too much. But I just don't know how you can watch this game, see DTR not do anything, the offense not do anything. And the very little they did, it was just dink and dunk, short drives for most of it. And then they got shut out, or not shut out, stopped on a fourth and goal from the red zone. Then late they had a decent drive, which is the Dolphins are in full prevent defense. But I just don't understand how you can watch DTR play like this, the offense do nothing, and then be like, all right, well, we're going to bench him, but for Bailey Zappi, my old guy, like, how? Like, Winston out of those three, yes, he's turning the ball over, but he's clearly the best quarterback out of them, all three of them. So I honestly am like legitimately questioning if the Browns are just intentionally tanking at this point, starting Zappy against the Ravens. I'll be surprised if they're within 20 points of the Ravens. That game is blowout written all over it. But not to get too ahead of myself here, DTR didn't do anything this game. Very much struggled. And you kind of pull for him. He seems like a nice guy, good guy, but just Jesus, he is not the answer at quarterback for them. Yeah, pretty much nothing in the run game from the Browns either. Foreman had a couple nice rushes, I guess. Jerome Ford got hurt. We'll take a pretty serious injury. He was back in the second half. Jeudy had a decent game. Of course, my opponent had him too. He did have a drop, though, that was kind of bad on third down to start the second half. Jordan Akins had a couple nice grabs. Getting back to the Dolphins here. Tyreek Hill, I went over the passing, rushing. Tyreek Hill had a good game. Good to see hit. Well, I'm not a Tyreek fan. I actually fucking hate Tyreek Hill. But I guess if you're a Dolphins fan, good to see him get more involved. Malik Washington had a couple nice catches. Well, at the team stats here, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Dolphins definitely outplayed them, deserved to win the game. Browns defense kept it close, kind of as I predicted would happen, but their offense would very much struggle in this game. Game kind of played out similar to how I expected it, pretty much. Probably how most people expected it to. Again, obviously, especially not for the Browns, but Dolphins, not a pretty win. Defense stepped up. The offense didn't do too much, but, I actually saw a stat that the Dolphins have the third overall ranked defense, and the Dolphins fans in the comments are like what the are they blind making these rankings? I've been saying the Dolphins defense. I mean, at times this year it's looked terrible, but it has actually been playing some decent ball this year. Besides really that Bills debacle, well, both Bills games that got torched, but especially the first one. Outside of the Bills and the Packers game, maybe their defense has actually been playing some solid ball this year. Is it worthy of being the third ranked defense? In my eyes, probably not that high. That's maybe a bit of a stretch, but well, maybe more than a bit. But it is apparently. So that's a little surprising. Sorry, looking at my phone here again. But yeah, I think these stats are pretty self-explanatory. Not a great win for the Dolphins, but good win defensively. Offense did enough to win this game. Browns defense played decent, kind of the case all year, and just their offense just didn't do anything in this one. Kind of symbolic of the Browns season. Dolphins have a pretty good shot at the postseason too, but Huntley, it's going to be interesting to see how he plays against the Jets because the first time against the Jets, the game was close and they had Tua. And obviously at home for the Jets, they can play spoiler to the division rival. They just played, I don't think they can play much worse than they did last week. So, last week of the year, they're like, oh, fuck it. We had nothing to lose at this point. Let's just lay it out on the line. Who cares? Can spoil our division rival season, especially with Huntley in there, even though he played good. So, going to be interesting to see how that game plays out. God, I'm getting excited for the playoffs here. But yeah, not a great game for the Browns. Guess defensively they play good. Dolphins, good grinded out win defensively in that one. Oh boy, let me take a sip before I talk about this game. Damn, just finished my whole can of this thing. Oh shit, I thought I had more in there. Anyway, Packers Vikings. All right, so the score is probably a bit misleading in this game. The Vikings, well, the Packers were up 3-0 at the end of the first quarter. They were moving the ball well. Jacobs fumbled on their first drive. I was like, well, that really sucks, the Packers. They were going to maybe set the tone. They had a good opening drive going, maybe put it in the end zone, get a lead, establish themselves early. From the second and third quarter, the Vikings really played a good game. They had the game well in hand. It felt like they were up 3 scores. And then late, the Packers scored. The Vikings, it seems like they went into too much of a prevent defense. And again, the Vikings always have a tendency to do this. I feel like games they are fully in control. They're fully in control of. They kind of let it get a little too close a lot of the time. So Vikings were kind of full prevent, too much of a prevent defense. Packers ended up scoring late, made it interesting. The Vikings hit a 3rd and short, and they ended up passing to Akers out of the backfield, a kind of a play action running back flat scheme, something like that. And Akers, he bobbled it for, I was like, is this guy going to drop it and then get the pass chance? He ended up catching it. The Vikings ended up winning, but definitely a little bit too close for comfort if you're pulling for the Vikings and you're a Vikings fan, I think. But yeah, I'll go through the stats real quick here. Jordan Love didn't do a lot this game. The Vikings, a lot of these came in prevent when the Vikings were in prevent defense. The Vikings defense balled out. Really impressive game from them. Got to give credit to them like they had most of this year. Jacobs had a couple nice rushes, though. I think he had a bit of a better game than the stats suggest, maybe. You had Emmanuel Wilson getting involved. He had a decent game. Yeah, not too much in the receiving core, but a decent balance there. Dobbs had a decent game. Pretty solid game from him. Darnold had a really good game, had a pick that wasn't too pretty, but outside of that, he played a really good game. Not too much in the run game, but Aaron Jones getting a bit involved. That is kind of maybe one, I don't want to say flaw, but maybe something I would like to see the Vikings get a little bit better at is they are kind of a bit too heavy on the pass, I feel like. Obviously, they're 14-2, so it obviously doesn't affect them that much. And obviously, I'm just a fan. The coaches and Kevin O'Connell, everyone know a million times more than I do. But I would like to ideally see them maybe be a bit more balanced in the pass run game. But Aaron Jones had again, only about 4 yards per rush, 3.9, but he had a decent day running the ball, had a couple of good rushes. Jefferson was quiet for a good portion of this game, but he had a good game. Late, he kind of got more involved in the second half. Jalen Nailor had a good game and a touchdown. Jordan Addison had a good game, another touchdown. Again, another 69-yard performance. TJ Hudson 1 yard short of 69. If only he could get 69. God, I'm so cringe. We'll get the team stats here. I think this is pretty telling of how the game went. These team stats. If you just take the team stats away, maybe in the box score, and just see 25-27, it's like, damn, like went right down to the wire, back and forth. Vikings maybe got a field goal late. No, that's not what happened. The Vikings were in full control and then just kind of took their foot off the gas. And I think these stats suggest that the Vikings, outplayed the Packers. They definitely deserved to win the game. Had they not converted that 3rd and short, I honestly think the Packers would have went down the field and scored and won the game. That would have been absolutely disheartening for the Vikings because then they would have been locked into the 5 seed with the Lions winning on Monday night. But yeah, the Vikings, obviously that didn't happen. And quick point here, some bold play calling in that situation by Kevin O'Connell. First down, most teams would have ran it. He did a play fake, got a first down to CJ Ham. So that was a nice call by Kevin O'Connell, who I think is probably the most underrated coach in the league. Such a good offensive play call. Even last year, I think he was a really good coach when they only went 7-10. Uh, then he ran it, and then he did another bootleg on second and down, got Jefferson some yards, third and short. Then he did another play action pass. So maybe some just really good play calling, maybe a bit more aggressive than most coaches probably would have just ran it, and then maybe had one pass sprinkled in there, the third down pass maybe. But really good play calling from Kevin O'Connell there. Some ballsy play calling. It paid off for him and his team. But yeah, these stats I think are pretty telling of how the game went. Vikings outplayed them in pretty much all these categories. They each had a turnover, but Vikings was a pick, Packers was a fumble, that Jacobs fumble, and then the Darnold pick I mentioned. Uh, yeah, I was a bit concerned this game that the NFL might favor the Vikings with some calls, try to get Vikings Lions to be for the division and the 1 seed next week. There were some, I think two off the top of my head, some kind of questionable calls. One of them at the end of the first half, the Vikings missed a field goal and they called an offsides. And if I remember right at the top of my head, I think it was like a very questionable call. And they had Mike Pereira come on there and said, like, I don't think you can make that call, the rules analyst. And then they made the field goal. So that was kind of one right there. I was like, okay, like that's a little sus. Then the second one I'm kind of blanking. Was there two? Maybe not. Maybe I'm losing my mind. Kind of blanking on the second one. There was one. But yeah, I don't think the refs cost the Packers the game or anything like that. Vikings definitely deserve to win this game. I think these stats are pretty telling of that. And yeah, good win for the Vikings. Them and the Lions. That's going to be absolute cinema. Just going to be an absolute masterpiece of a game. Going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. Winner gets the 1 seed, loser gets the 5 seed. We're going to have a 14-win team getting a 5 seed is insane. Some people talking about, they need to redo the seeding because of that. It's going to be a 14-win either Vikings or Lions team visiting likely either a 10 or how many? Yeah, likely a 10-win Bucks or Rams team. Maybe 11 wins the Rams win, but still. So that's kind of raising some questions there. But even last year, the Eagles, even though they shit the bed the second half of the year after they started 10-1, after that Niners game, they completely shit the bed. They only beat the Giants, and they very narrowly blew that game too. They were up 17 with Tyrod Taylor starting that game, and then Week 18, the Giants blew them out somehow. Which I predicted the Giants to win that Week 18 game. Not to toot my own horn, I kind of felt that the game was going to go that way, and it did. But anyway, my point is, last year the Eagles, even though they shit the bed the second half of the year, they still were an 11-win team. They had to go on the road against the 9-win Bucks, or the Cowboys the year prior. They were a 12-win team and had to go on the road against the Bucks and Tom Brady, who were 8-9, which they were 8-9. They were a bad team. They should have been 9-8 if they didn't bench the starters the second half of that Falcons game. Well, really, toward the end of the first half, like that last drive, they benched the starters. At least they benched Brady. They were locked in anyway. I don't blame them for doing so, but that triggered me that they finished with a losing record rather than a winning record. And they had so many games they lost. They should have won that year, like the fucking Browns game with Njoku making that catch. And again, I'm a Brady super fan, so I was pulling for the Bucs, and I still like the Bucs. They were my second favorite team even before Brady was there, coincidentally. Yeah, they had that Browns game, then the Packers game week 3 with no Mike Evans. The Bucs were on for 2 to tie the game. Fournette had a walk-in lane to the end zone to tie it. They got a false start or delay a game. Coming out of a timeout too, I remember that. They definitely would have won that game. I think if Mike Evans played. What's another one they lost? The Steelers game, the defense allowed 2 3rd-and-1 conversions to Mitchell Trubisky to lose the game. Otherwise, I think Brady and company would have gone right down the field, scored, got the game-winning field goal on that one. The Bengals game, they're up 17. They blew it. Should have won that one. Anyway, I won't go over all of them, but I'm getting way off topic here. Back to this game. Just good win for the Vikings. Obviously, sets up a cinema showdown for the Lions game. Packers seriously might be the 7 seed at 12-5, which is absolutely insane. So that's gonna suck for them. Falcons Commanders. This was also a really good game. Obviously, game went to overtime. I picked the Falcons to pull off the upset, and they should have. They should have won this game. It started out kind of similar to how I expected. I thought the Falcons defense was going to play a really solid game. It did at the start. Commanders were up 7-0, and the Falcons scored 17 unanswered. They were up 17-7 at the half. And then the Commanders had two ridiculously long drives in the second half. And they ended up getting the lead. The Falcons offense like barely did anything because they barely had the ball. And then actually I don't even think they got a first down in the third quarter now that I'm thinking about it. I think they literally had like 3 plays now that I'm thinking about it. But Falcons late had a drive. They were down 7. Commanders got a touchdown to pretty much ice the game most likely, but there was a holding penalty, I believe. They just settled for a field goal. Falcons had a good drive. Penix had a couple clutch throws. They got first and goal in the red zone, and they lined up in a wildcat formation with Bijan. And I was thinking in my head, I'm like, I do not really like this wildcat formation on first and goal. And yep, as soon as I'm thinking that, they snap the ball. There's a miscommunication. They lose a shit ton of yardage. And they ended up getting to a fourth and goal, and Penix threw a dime in there to Kyle Pitts of all people. So if Penix is Kyle Pitts looking like an NFL caliber tight end, then you know something's seriously going right. Kyle Pitts has just been obviously like very disappointing outside of his rookie year. But and then yeah, in overtime, then after that I thought the Falcons were gonna go for 2. They just went for 1 to tie it. Then Zacchaeus dropped a pass, and I'm like, yep, all right, well, this game is gift wrap for the Falcons. They got into field goal range. They got kind of bailed out on a PI call, and I thought the kick was good to win the game at the buzzer, but it wasn't. It was short. Overtime, the Commanders get the ball, go down the field, score. They win the game. Not Dan Quinn, Raheem Morris had some very questionable clock management. That field goal drive, he had 2 timeouts. He didn't use one when he should have. They could have got some more plays in there. Again, they still got in long field goal range, but didn't make the kick. It was short. And then at the end of the first half, same thing. He had two timeouts. Didn't use one when he should have. They had to settle for a field goal. Probably could have played it differently. Got some more plays in there, but he didn't. So I think Raheem Morris, those timeouts are a serious point as to why they lost this game. And I think they'll beat the Panthers, but I think the Bucs are going to beat the Saints. So I think honestly, them losing this game in big essence because of the timeout failures, pulling a Matt Eberflus there, is going to be a big reason why the Falcons missed the playoffs. Obviously, there's much bigger reasons than one game and 2 situations in the one game, but still, big questionable calls or non-calls rather from Raheem Morris there. Michael Penix, I think, played a pretty solid game. Yeah, interception, it seemed to be on a miscommunication with London, I believe. Just he threw it to where he thought London was going to be. London was somewhere else. Bijan had a good game. Tyler Gio had he only had 3 rushes, but 6.3 yards for rush. That'll work. But yeah, Bijan had a good game rushing. Drake London had a good game. Pitts had a couple catches, that touchdown I mentioned. Yeah, then not too much outside of that, really. Jane Daniels had a really good game. He balled out. Did have the pick, though, kind of blanking on the interception. Exactly when it was, what happened. Yeah, Jane Daniels had a really good rushing day, too, as their leading rusher by a good margin, more than double Brian Robinson. Robinson had a decent game, too. Good yards per carry for him. Zacchaeus had a really good game, even though he had that pivotal drop that pretty much probably would have helped set them up in field goal range to win the game there. Zach Ertz had a pretty good game, had the game-winning touchdown in OT. Looking at the team stats here, I think they're pretty telling how this game went. Very close in a lot of these categories, except rush yards. The Commanders kind of killed them in big part to Jane Daniels. And then pass yards, the Falcons kind of marginally won that battle. But total yards, Commanders had almost 100 more, sort of, if you round down a bit for the Falcons. So yeah, look at these stats. You'd think the Commanders should win this game. especially third down efficiency. The Falcons were only 2 of 10. They only had 1 heading into the fourth quarter. Actually, they might have had 0 heading into the fourth quarter. Penalties killed the Commanders. That was big for the Falcons getting in this game. Commanders time session, those 2 long ass drives in the second half, those were a big reason as to why the Commanders won the time of possession battle. Yeah, each team had a pick. Yeah, so pretty even a lot of these stats, but a lot of them the Commanders kind of got the better of the Falcons by decent margin. So I think they are pretty telling of how this game went. Big win for the Commanders. They clinch a playoff spot. They just have to win, and they're the 6th seed. They'll be on the road against either the Rams or the NFC South winner, which is probably going to be the Bucs. I guess technically you can have a rematch between these two teams, except it would be in Atlanta. But they also could be the 7th seed, play the Eagles. As I mentioned, that's a scenario that's definitely plausible. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the Commanders. Falcons, just, oh boy. I mean, much higher aspirations than 8-8 this year. Definitely disappointing this back half of the year when they've been on their losing streak there. The last game, the Monday night game. So this was a meaningless game in terms of seeding for both teams. The Niners are out, and the Lions, even if they had lost this game, be a full game back of the Vikings to the 1 seed. It's still, they would have just had to beat the Vikings in week 18. They would have hit the 1 seed. Not that it's like an easy task or anything, obviously, but they could have dropped this game and they would have been in the same scenario they are now with the Vikings. But Dan Campbell played the guys. The offense went off. Not surprised. An absolute shootout in this game, obviously. Goff had a really good game. He went off. Jahmyr Gibbs had a good game. He went off. Even Greg Reynolds, good yards per carry. Jameson Williams went off. J-Mo, Valporta, Amon-Ra. So even Jahmyr Gibbs getting, I mean, literally like everyone had a good game from their receiving core pretty much. Even Allen Robinson getting a nice sideline catch there. Purdy had a good game early, but then the 2 picks really hurt them late. But he had a good game. He got hurt. Josh Dobbs came in, played a good game, had a rushing touchdown. He's starting against the Cardinals. That's going to be an interesting game. Dobbs Mania. Maybe we get a Week 18 Dobbs Mania game. Pretty much nothing to run game, though, for the Niners. Probably should have tried to run the ball a bit more. But yeah, Ricky Pearsall, this was his breakout game. He looked really good. Good to see that. Kittle had a really good game. Jennings, Team Garino getting a nice couple catches in there. Yeah, really good game from the Niners there, offensively, receiving at least. Looking at the team stats here, it's probably like, how the hell did the Lions lose this game? I mean, the Niners outplayed them in most of these categories, except a couple, really. Lions outplayed them in some. But I would say that picks are a big one. They were kind of deep into Lions territory. And Jake Moody missing 2 field goals and an extra point. That obviously hurt them a lot. I think the Lions probably still would have won anyway, even if Moody had made those kicks. They would have they would have probably pressed down on the gas pedal a bit harder. They really needed to. But yeah, I think these stats are pretty telling. Both the offenses went off. Obviously, the turnovers really hurt the Niners. The missed kicks from Moody. That's going to be interesting to see what happens with Moody. They keep backing him, but it's like, Jesus, like, how long can you keep backing this guy? And I feel bad. Jake Moody seems like a really nice guy, but and Shanahan did back him. Originally, he said, we have our guy, and then he said, we're reassessing everything on the team. So that's, a reporter asked him, is Moody still the guy? And Shanahan said, well, we're reassessing everything. So obviously not a direct quote in support of your kicker there, but I'm going to assume they move on from him, but who the hell knows? Yeah, the turnovers and the missed kicks really hurt the Niners in this game. Other than that, relatively close in a lot of these stats. Niners outplayed them in some. Lions outplayed them in some. The Lions' defense is a serious concern right now, though. The Niners' offense has obviously been struggling lately, and they went off in this game. And if it wasn't, Moody missed 7 points worth of kicks, so they should have at least 41 points. And again, it's a what-if scenario. Maybe the Lions' defense would have played different. Their offense would have scored more, but who knows? But still, it's a fact that Moody missed 7 points worth of kicks, and one of them was like a 58-yarder, but still, missed 7 points worth of kicks. And that part of me, they had a 50-something yards, a couple yards short of the 58 that he missed earlier. But part of me was honestly hoping. I mean, Shanahan, I think, sent him out because he did believe he could make the kick. But part of me was thinking once he missed that, Shanahan probably maybe wasn't too infuriating he missed it. 'Cause he's like, oh, missed again. Like, there's another excuse to get rid of this guy. Maybe internally that's what he was. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Of course, Shanahan wanted to win the game, so he probably wanted to make the kick. But hopefully, you guys know what I mean. But anyway, the Niners defense, or well, their defense played bad too. But some of the plays though from the Lions, like the hook and ladder play on 3rd and 1, they had their first touchdown. It was an interesting formation. It was a jet sweep type of handoff. Just I can't wait to see what they have in the playoffs. If they're running this shit in the regular season, that's going to be insane. Especially if they get the 1 seed. I'm sure they'll install some extra trick plays in there too with the bye week. But yeah, the Lions defense is a serious sign of concern right now. The Niners looked like the greatest show on turf. They literally scored a touchdown every drive in the first half except one, where Mooney missed a field goal late in the first half. And I think it was kind of a deeper one. I think the only reason was because the Niners were like a holding penalty, if I remember right, something like that. And yeah, the second half the Niners moved the ball on it too, but then the Kirby Joseph ended up getting 2 picks on Purdy. Otherwise than that, the Niners offense just having its game. They were just moving the ball, doing whatever they wanted to the Lions defense, and the Lions offense doing the same to the Niners defense. But without those 2 picks from Kirby Joseph, the Lions defense would have been in serious trouble. So they obviously really need to clean some things up because the Niners can score 34, and then the Vikings are going to score 100 at this rate. So obviously that's a bit of an exaggeration. So the Niners, the Lions defense really needs to tighten up next week if they want to beat or this week rather, they want to beat the Vikings, get that number 1 seed. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But good win for the Lions. The Niners are obviously bad, but at home, prime time, have a chance to be sneaky, especially with all the injuries. The Lions offense definitely carried this game, I would say. Those 2 picks from Kirby Joseph were huge, though. What is that? Yeah, I was gonna look for some stat here. I'm blanking on it now. Blanking on it. Whatever. Anyway, yeah. So Lions Vikings, obviously game of the year. Interesting how that plays out. I feel like we might get a Dobbs Mania game on Josh Dobbs. It's gonna be interesting how that one plays out against the Cardinals. Okay, got all the games here. Yep. All right. So yeah, pretty good mix of some good games and blowouts, some like bad games. Yeah. Well, actually, there really weren't that many good games. A lot of blowouts now that I'm looking it over. But yeah, pretty good week. Set things up. Pretty good position for week 18. Some meaningless games in terms of seeding between teams already eliminated. Some seeding games on the line. But yeah, pretty good week 17. Hopefully you guys won your fantasy championships. If you made it that far, you won your your respective matchup for a whatever place you were fighting for. Hope you guys are good betting. With your picks, I always say, if for whatever reason you're still doing fantasy week 18, good luck in your fantasy championships or whatever fantasy game you're in for place positioning. I will end the video here. I'm going to probably shortly record my week 18 picks video, and then I'm thinking about if I have time to do a playoff scenario video based on week 18 results. So be on the lookout for that. I will end the video here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a good one. Take it easy, guys.